5 of Luke's Gospel, Jesus is teaching the people on the seashore, on the shore of Lake Galilee. And Jesus is in the boat because the people were crushing in on him. When he had finished teaching, Jesus told Peter, "Launch out into the deep." Now, if you go to the Holy Land, the very newest church that you can find is built precisely at this very spot, where Jesus told Peter to launch out into the deep. And it is called in Latin, duc in altum, launch into the deep. It's a spectacular church, unlike many others that we have seen. Instead of the altar that we see over here, there's a huge big boat, and that is the altar. And at the back of the church, the whole back of the church, you don't have a wall like we have here, but you have floor-to-ceiling glass, and you can see the Lake of Galilee. You can see the waves going up and down. You can see boats on the lake. You can see fishermen going back and forth on the shore. And in that boat chapel, as we call it, there are the 12 apostles, including Judas. He's the only one that does not have a halo around his head. They are the foundation of the church, and rightly so. But more important, in my opinion, is the foyer of the church, the lobby, the alcove of the church, which is as big as the boat chapel itself. And it is supported by 8 pillars. And each of these pillars are dedicated to the women and others who supported the apostles, to the women who supported Jesus and the apostles in their ministry, as we heard today. 3 of those pillars are named after Mary, the Mother of God, Mary and Martha, and Mary Magdalene, whom we have heard today. Very often we treat her as a sinner, as a prostitute, just because 7 demons were expelled from her. The 7 demons in those days are things that you and I experience today in terms of things like stuttering, Asperger's syndrome, and attention deficiency. All these things that you and I can deal with medication in many ways were unable to be dealt with in the time of Jesus, and they were called demons very often. And so these 8 pillars are in honor of the women that were in the gospel today. There is Susanna, there is Joanna, the wife of Herod's court official Chusa, and there are others. And it is so symbolic for me in a twofold way. First, that these pillars support the church, just like women have been supporting the church from the time of Jesus and continue till today. And apart from these pillars, that whole church would collapse. Apart from the women, who make up half our population, do support the church, our church would also collapse. There's a second thing that is very important to me, is that you cannot go into the boat chapel unless you pass these pillars. They welcome you into the church, just like women have been welcoming us to the church all through the ages. From the time we were born, my mother took me to be baptized. They taught me how to call God Abba, Father, taught me my prayers, prepared me by my first communion, prepared me for confirmation. It's not that the others were not involved, but she and women like her have been constantly the ones that have been nurturing the faith in our church today. And so what happens is, very sadly, in the patriarchal society of those days and even now, the women are relegated to the side. They're not involved in the direction in which our church is going. They're not called to be in leadership within our church. They are not called to give an input into the policy in which our churches are being run. And that is so sad, because even our secular societies have already been having women in leadership Way back 70 years ago, not 70 years ago, about 50 years ago, you had Indira Gandhi in India, you had Bandaranaike in Sri Lanka, you had Golda Meir in Israel, and those were fantastic leaders. Today we have them in Scandinavia, in Germany, in South America, in New Zealand. But where do we have them within our church today? We need to take that as an example. You know, the story is told of Winston Churchill. He was some 70 years ago, that's why I mentioned it earlier. They asked Winston Churchill, "Sir, in the year 2000, what would you say if women were ruling the world?" Winston Churchill simply smiled and said, "Still?" Because women really not manipulate, that's a bad word, do help to support, to carry on in our, not only in our civil society, but within our church. And unfortunately, we do not give them all the attention that they need. As I stood in that foyer of the church, I thought about other people that brought out the very best in Jesus, Martha and Mary. Because of them, Jesus gave us that wonderful phrase, "I am the life of this world. He who believes in me, even though he dies, will live forever." It was the widow of Naim who was all by herself that challenged Jesus to advance his hour and bring this little child back to life. These women that we heard in the gospel today were taking a chance in a patriarchal society. If they didn't have their husbands, their fathers or their brothers next to them, they were causing a scandal. And yet they stood out because they believed in the Son of Man. They believed that the kingdom of God was right there. They believed and they came forward. It's up to you and to me to begin to realize where the true importance of our church lies today. It's up to you and to me to realize that unless we open ourselves to the role of women within our church, we are sadly going to be a very poor church indeed. Jesus gave us the example 2,000 years ago. It's high time we do likewise. God bless you all.